Good morning. Thursday, January 21. And I won't be here tomorrow or Saturday as I typically am not. We will be pre-recording the service on Saturday morning to be put up on the church Facebook and website by 10 o'clock on Sunday. We will gather at noon on Sunday for the telling of the story of the conversion of Paul, probably without players this time because it's going to be pretty darn cold and breezy, so I won't subject them to that, but we'll still tell the story anyway and sing our 4 hymns. Brave souls, welcome. And then back here, 10 o'clock Monday morning. Bible study Tuesday, 6 o'clock Zoom. Food collection February 6th. Also a grinder and chili sale. All of that to support the food ministries of our locality. Really appreciate all the many ways those of you that listen in contribute to the church in an ongoing way. It's very inspiring. Here is a prayer. This was written by Bishop George Cotton, who died in 1866. O God, who hast made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth, and did send thy blessed Son Jesus Christ to preach peace to them that are far off and to them that are nigh, grant that all the peoples of the world may feel after thee and find thee, and hasten, O heavenly Father, the fulfillment of thy promise to pour out thy Spirit upon all flesh through Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen. Excuse me. I read that prayer because I'm going to talk today a little bit about one of the best programs that our denomination sponsors, excuse me, which is called the Companion Synod program. This started, a number of years ago, quite early in our denomination's life. So again, sometimes we use the word synod in different ways. Here in America, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is divided into 65 synods, each of those functioning like a diocese with a bishop, or in some traditions that might be called a presbytery or a district or something like that. It's an area. A synod is an area that has a couple of hundred congregations in it. It might, like a place like Minneapolis, St. Paul would have its own synod because there's so many Lutheran churches in the Twin Cities. But here in New England, all 6 states of New England make one synod because there just aren't that many Lutherans in especially northern New England. Anyway, the word synod, though, can also mean something like a national church. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod uses that meaning for that word. They are a national church body. Well, so we have a companion synod program, and what that means is every one of our 65 synods in America, in the United States, has a companion Lutheran church body, or 2. I don't know if any have 3, but we here in New England have 2, that somewhere else in the world, so that we can be connected to Lutherans in other places, and through a mutual conversation, through travel, we can become more attuned to the way Lutheranism is lived out in other places, and both the struggles and the contributions that people over there can make. For example, we have lots of Lutheran churches in the countries in Africa. Ethiopia certainly has one. Tanzania has one, but there are many others. Many of the countries in South and Central America have Lutheran churches. The Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they have Lutheran expressions. A lot of the Eastern European countries have them as well, and some of the churches in the Middle East. And so here in New England, we happen to have 2 companion synods. One is what we call the Evangelical Lutheran Church in the Jordan and the Holy Land. That's a small denomination. It's a small church body. I think they have 8 parishes, 7 or 8 parishes. That's all. That's the whole church. These are Palestinian Christians. And I'll say a bit more about that body in a moment, because that's the one I'm more familiar with. Our second companion synod is the Lutheran Church in Honduras. And so from time to time, we have people at the synod level here in New England who organize trips to those places so that anybody who wants to can be part of the trip. Of course, the trip's been curtailed over COVID here, but trips for the future are still being planned, and we send folks to those places, and sometimes we host folks from those places to come here, and as I say, we get to know each other. It's not intended primarily as a kind of one-way financial support, where prosperous America supports some struggling church in another part of the world. I mean, there's some of that, of course. We want to be helpful as we can, but it's not primarily mission work. This arrangement. This isn't like us sending down missionaries to build hospitals or build churches or build schools. We have all of those kinds of things do happen, but they happen under a different department. I mean, that's a whole different project. The Companion Synod project is intended to help us understand that we stand as equals with these people in these other church relationships. We go there as much to learn as to teach, and we mostly go there to stand in fellowship with, to make sure that some of these smaller, out-of-the-way little churches don't feel neglected, forgotten, and in fact, we're often the ones enriched by the contact, because we see how faith can express itself in very, very different social, political conditions and economic conditions than what we're used to. So I don't know a lot, frankly, about the church in Honduras. One of my good seminary colleagues and friends since then, he and his wife, the Reinesses, Dave and Doreen Reines, they do a lot of work with the church in Honduras and take trips down there, and he's been working on his Spanish for a few years to make that even more fruitful. My contact over the years has been primarily with the Palestinians. I've made 4 trips to the Holy Land. 2 of them were real typical touristy tours, zipping about the countryside in an air-conditioned bus and staying at nice hotels and, seeing the high point sites and that kind of thing. Those are okay, but I would highly recommend one of these other kinds of trips. 2 of the trips I took were of a different sort, where you really got to mingle with people. The first time I went over, it was actually with Hartford Seminary. And so that was an educational trip, and we really got to know some Israeli people, some Palestinian people, both Christians and Muslims. Talked to shopkeepers, visited a refugee camp, visited a settlement on the West Bank, listened to, had, I guess you'd say, lectures, presentations made by the kind of movers and shakers of those places, trying to understand their perspective on their life. And that, now that was really in the early 90s, so we're talking almost 30 years ago. I went another time when Bishop Munib Yunan was becoming the bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Jordan in the Holy Land. And our bishop here then was Bob Isaacson, and he brought a few of us along, and we went over as part of the Companion Synod program to partner with them, to demonstrate our solidarity with them as Bishop Yunan was being consecrated. Happened to be a Reformation Sunday weekend. We were there for about a week. And again, that trip involved a lot of conversation with real, regular people, church people of various kinds. Involved when we weren't worshiping in the main church in Jerusalem, Redeemer Lutheran Church, which hosts I think it hosts 3 congregations, if I'm not mistaken. An English-speaking one, maybe 4. English-speaking, German, Danish, and and Arabic, I think. Things may have changed too since then, but there's a very beautiful Lutheran church right in the old city that hosts those congregations. But as I said, they have several congregations. So there are 3 or 4 around Bethlehem, one right in Bethlehem, the old city of Bethlehem, and a couple on the smaller villages on the outside, Beit Sahur and I'm blanking on the other one. And I think there's certainly one in Amman, Jordan, and a few others scattered around the West Bank. Now let me say just a little bit about. I learned all of this in these trips. A typical question Palestinian Lutherans get is, when did you convert from Islam to Christianity? They're quick to tell you, oh, no, we never converted. I mean, we were Christians like from the beginning, 2,000 years. But what happened is that, so there was a Christian community in the Holy Land from the time of Jesus that did not scatter, did not get chased out when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and things like that. They managed to stay alive in their little villages and preserve the faith. But they had a style of faith that we would associate today with the Eastern Orthodox Church, or Armenian Orthodox perhaps, or one of those other Orthodox church bodies. But then what happened is in the mid-1800s, thereabouts, missionaries came to that part of the world from England and Germany. And they built hospitals, and they built schools, and they helped build churches, and they also brought their style, their Western European style of the faith with them. And so what tended to happen is if these Palestinian Christians were sent to a German-sponsored school, many of them became Lutherans. And if they went to a school sponsored by the English, many of them became Anglican, what we would know as Episcopalians. And so there are varieties of Palestinian Christians. There still are Orthodox ones. There's still there are these Lutheran ones. There are these Anglican ones, and then there are others too, other various Protestant bodies, and Roman Church too. So Palestinian Christians exist and have existed from the very beginning. They are a really interesting group of people, and they function. Even though they're a tiny church, as I say, I mean, the whole church body is like 7 or 8 congregations. That's it. But they have an outsized impact on their society. Highly, highly literate. The clergy usually go off to Europe to be trained. The Bishop Mini Bunan, I believe, got his doctorate in Finland, if I'm not mistaken. Mitri Raheb, who's the one I know best and consider a good friend, he did his work in Germany. These people they're fluent in English and several other languages. Very seriously trained clerics. And every parish has a school. The school that's attached to the parish serves both Muslim and Christian kids. That's an interesting feature, I think. They're mostly Muslim. I mean, the Palestinian population on the West Bank is mostly Muslim. And the Palestinian Christians function as a kind of a bridge between some of the Western nations and some of the Muslims in their own country. They're peace builders in a very serious way. They do operate other things besides parishes and schools. They have a secondary and college programs as well. They have arts programs, sports programs, music programs. I mean, they really are trying to provide a cultural underpinning for what they hope someday will be a fully functioning, free, independent, and fully sovereign and sustainable state of Palestine, nation of Palestine. That's their labor. And it's hard. It's hard for them because, I mean, you've got that giant wall that the Israelis built to keep protect themselves from their fear of terror. But that wall has also functioned to create almost a concentration camp style of life for some people in certain villages, and it has gone right through olive orchards and cut off people from their family fields that they've had for generations, and those kinds of things. So it's a really, really difficult life. And a lot of Palestinians who get a chance emigrate to some other place to be out from under that life. I'm astonished always by the perseverance, the courage, and the spirit of those who choose to stay and labor and work for not just for their own people, but really finally for something past what is, to a time when the state of Israel can exist next to the state of Palestine, and people can live in harmony and mutual respect and regard. Stranger things have happened. It's entirely possible for that to happen, but right now the present leadership in politics don't seem to be leading that way. Palestinian Lutherans are. I was on that trip with the bishop, and we stayed at a little Palestinian hotel right outside of Bethlehem. And I went to church in one of the village churches one day, and it was all in Arabic, of course, but I knew every word. I mean, I knew where we were in the liturgy because it was exactly the same liturgy we use. The interior of the building looked a lot like churches I'm familiar with here. It had a very kind of modernist Western style building. The music had a similar flow. It didn't sound Middle Eastern. It sounded more European. And the other funny part was, as I looked around, it seemed to me like I recognized all the characters. I was there when it was school vacation, so a lot of the teachers who would normally be in the congregation weren't there. So it was a fairly small attendance that Sunday. And I looked around, and there was a guy there, and you just could see by his body language, this is a guy who was really not that interested in being there, but his wife had dragged him, and there he was. And then there was the woman that couldn't keep her kids still. They were fooling around and stuff. And then, there were the people who wouldn't sing because, they just sort of mouthed the words a little bit. And then there were the ardent ones, every church always has people that are so glad to be there and they're into it, you know what I mean? All those characters were there. I looked around, I felt right at home. And so, you could tell when you were doing the creed or when you were doing the Lord's Prayer or when you were doing the Eucharistic prayer or all of those sorts of things. And then after the worship, into the fellowship hall for coffee and pastries. And oh man, now see, there was a little bit of difference there. Arabic coffee is not like our coffee. This is strong coffee, strong and sweet. And the pastries are this world sweet, honey and pistachios and all that kind of thing that you might find in any sort of Eastern Mediterranean country, like the Greeks might have or the Turks might have some of these kind of desserts. And a lot of people spoke English. So we were able to have conversation in the fellowship hall about our experience in their church, in their villages, meeting their people. It's life-changing. Life-changing to be there not just as tourists, but as a participant in the lives of the people while you're able to be there. They're good people. They're really good people. And they're smart people, and they're dedicated people. And I have hope. Not in a really short run. Things are tough. But there are really knowledgeable, wise, committed people trying to figure out a way past the stalemate that exists over there right now. And these are the types of things that you learn when you don't just take the air-conditioned bus and zip from hotel to hotel. it's eye-opening in the best way. So that Companion Synod program is doing that for all the synods in the United States are sending folks from time to time to these other church bodies in these other parts of the world and coming home refreshed and renewed and inspired. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. If any of you ever get a chance to go on such a trip, I would very much encourage it. You know, it's not cheap, of course, to fly to some of these places, but you'll never be the same. And you'll meet some of the most wonderful people and be inspired, and maybe even a little chastened. You know, you come back to our part of the world and think, what are we complaining about? You know, why do we want to fight over which version of the Lord's Prayer we use on a Sunday morning, or which, you know, whether to use a TV screen or a printed bulletin? I mean, what, really? Please, you know, let's lighten up with each other, because some of our Christian friends are living through hard times and still rejoicing in their faith, praising their God, and you know, as Paul might say, you know, fighting the good fight. They really are, in the best way. So I'll come back Monday and talk about another program, or of either the Synod or the National Church. But I hope that you will think about the Companion Synod program and see if there's any way that you can benefit from that. God's peace be with you this day.